Hello everyone, I am Benjamin Contreras, and welcome back to the Jasper Production Show. And I'm finally here after a very long time of waiting with my final holiday game review series. And for this, I'm reviewing the Game of the Year edition of The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion for the Xbox 360. And yes, indeed, if you did see my very old Skyrim video, you will realize that I actually do have the real box for it, which, right, to me looks very cool looking. It has like that medieval tablet sort of style with the Oblivion logo on it. The back of the box shows like a bunch of screenshots from the game. It lists both of the DLCs for the game. One of them I have seen a little bit of, but for the first one, I have no idea how to actually trigger it. But yeah, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Now, out of all the games that I did for this Christmas series, this is the one that I've had the most hype for, and the one I've been most excited to play because I really enjoyed the likes of Skyrim, so I was interested to see how Oblivion was, as it's much older than Skyrim. Now, like my Dragon Age Inquisition review, I'm going to be talking about the stuff that I do like about the game, and then the stuff that I don't like about the game. Now, first off, I really, in terms of the stuff that I do like how the game has a lot more of a variety of weapons compared to the likes of Skyrim. Like in Skyrim, there are only two types of weapons, but in this game, there's a whole lot more. There's, of course, the basics like swords, maces, axes, great swords, battle axes, and warhammers. But there's also clubs, which are different from the games. There's also long swords and short swords instead of just regular swords, which I didn't really find that much difference in. They both do look slightly different, but I don't really find that much of a difference. Like, the short swords are pretty much slightly faster than the long swords because you sort of get the picture, but they're still, that also counteracts with something that I don't like about the game, and I'll get into that in a second. But another thing I like about the game is that the combat is way more faster than the likes of Skyrim or the previous game that came before this, Morrowind, which is the recent one that I've played. Yes, I've played these games in a completely wrong order, but that doesn't matter at this point. The combat in this game is way more fast-paced. You're able to swing like your weapons much quicker and get rid of enemies a lot more quicker, which I really like. I enjoy how it's all fast-paced. Another thing that I like is the overall setting of the game. Like, the main area, the Imperial City, is very huge, and there's a whole lot of stuff to do in that. The first thing I actually did in there was actually the arena, which I actually completed in 2 days, and I had fun doing that. As well as the guilds being a lot more interesting compared to like the likes of Skyrim. I'm saying that mostly for the Dark Brotherhood, because that's actually, the guilds are much better in this game compared to the likes of Skyrim. I'm not trying to like backlash it in terms of like the guilds. I still like Skyrim, but I had a lot more time spent on these ones compared to Skyrim. Now, the things that I don't like about the game, first of all, the tank controls. For those of you who don't know, tank controls are essentially the camera is constantly facing your character no matter what. Even when you turn the character, instead of just controlling where he's moving, he will just turn, which will also move the camera. So essentially, in order to walk forward, you have to hold forward the entire time. I don't really like how that's sort of handled. Granted, you will get used to it after a while, but I just prefer the likes of how Skyrim, you're able to like turn your character in different ways, and the camera is like completely away from the character. Another thing I don't like is that there is no dual wielding. The first hand is always used for a weapon, and the second hand is always just used for a shield. And Magic actually has its own button since the Dragonborn is not in this game. Magic is instead used for what would usually be the Dragon Shout button, which I think is pretty cool, but I don't really find that to be... Sure, it's very good for like having an extra slot for something in case you want to have like a sword and shield and magic. You'll be able to like handle that a lot more since you don't have to constantly switch it over and over again. But I don't really like how you're only able to hold a shield in your left hand. I definitely prefer how in Skyrim you're able to dual wield and all that stuff. Two-handed weapons are basically the exact same. You're basically just holding two weapons, a weapon with both your hands, which is actually the main playstyle that I prefer the most. Also, another thing I don't like is there's not much in terms of variety in the character creation. And I'm saying that mostly because you're only able to change the head. This pretty much did happen in Morrowind as well, but granted, that game came out many times before it, so it pretty much has an excuse to have not as much variety as the other games. And compared to Morrowind, you're able to customize the head a whole lot more. Instead of having like presets that you have to pretty much deal with, you're able to do a lot more customization for it. There's a lot more options than in Morrowind, but in terms of the way your character looks besides the head, it's pretty much going to look the exact same for each of the characters if you're playing as the same race over and over again. So, while there is some variety, there isn't really that much compared to stuff nowadays. Another thing I don't really like is that the areas itself, while they do look interesting, the surroundings like the forest and the paths and all that stuff, they are very, very way too similar to each other. Like, after I finish the intro sequence and you see like how the Imperial City is like in the distance and you see a whole bunch of different forests, every single tree looks exactly the same. Like the exact same tree model is used repeatedly over and over again. I don't really think that... I mean, this was on the Xbox 360, and sure, it was released on the computers before this, but I just feel like they could have put a little bit more detail in terms of how the surroundings look, rather than everything else. But, yeah, while I did have a few things wrong with it, I still really did enjoy Oblivion. I didn't really have that much of a real experience. Like, I felt like I was immersed in the world compared to like Skyrim when I first played it. But in terms of the game itself, it was rather fun. The combat is very fast-paced, like I said. It felt cool, like going through all the different guilds, going through the main quest, trying to do all the cool stuff. However, there's a lot more variety in terms of like how the armors are. Like, you're able to see what your character looks like with the armor on like the character menu. And you know, the voice acting is very great. The story is really well thought out. The area, while it does look a bit bland, there are still some very cool things inside it, like the different dungeons and all that stuff. The score for the game I find to be way more triumphant in terms of how it's played. Unlike how Skyrim tried to immerse you, the score in Oblivion just sounds triumphant, especially the main theme when you start the game. I actually kind of prefer that over the Dragonborn theme. I'm probably going to get a lot of controversy over that, but I honestly can't really decide in terms of which one. But in terms of listening to, I definitely prefer Oblivion's theme. So, out of a 5-star rating, I'm going to give this game a 3 out of 5. The game's not perfect, but it's still a game I would recommend if you're interested in the Elder Scrolls series and if you haven't played any of the other games. I would probably recommend you play Skyrim first and then move on to Oblivion, because there's a lot more that Oblivion has that Skyrim doesn't have. So, still, if you have played Skyrim and haven't played Oblivion, you should definitely play it immediately. It is a very good RPG, and it is a very good Elder Scrolls game. So, I really hope you enjoyed my review and my holiday review series in general. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, like the video, comment on how you thought about it, you know, all that cool stuff. Follow me on Facebook where I talk about certain things, about when my videos are good, when my next videos are going to be about. And yeah, until then, I'm Benjamin Schurz, and until next time, bye.